Hey guys, and welcome to BohoJouel. My name is Sandra Belz, and today I'm really excited because I have these new kits that I just made available in my Etsy shop. I know anytime you start any craft, but especially jewelry making, it seems like there are so many little bits and pieces that it can be overwhelming trying to figure out where to begin, what to buy, what you need at home to get started with. So I created these fun little kits to help you guys get started. So if you've been curious about creating with resin jewelry, then here's a little kit to give you a couple of complete necklaces, earrings, and this video right here is specifically geared toward these kits so that you can see kind of what to do with the materials. So let me show you first of all what's in the kit. So I have here, let's get these out of the way first. I just have a couple of cards that I threw in here, resin pouring tips, resin jewelry care tips, and then my information as well. So that comes in there in case you need a little reference on pouring your resin or how to take care of your jewelry when it's done. And then these, I've already cut them a little for our demos, but I have 3x3 papers in each kit as well, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do with these. So each paper, of course, is going to be slightly different from kit to kit, but these are the basic papers that are going to be in them. And if they change as the kits sell, I'll try to update the photos in my Etsy shop as well. So then I have two 18-inch chains in here for you to make two complete necklaces. And then I have this gold glitter. It's actually a gold metal shavings, like a glass. It's really cool. I like to use this a lot because it just adds a really nice elegant touch to things. And then I have these for little inclusions as well. They're little seed beads, just clear and kind of white pearl colored seed beads. And then some other inclusions, just some different color beads, some gears, and a couple of butterflies. And again, with the gears, they're going to vary from kit to kit, but I make sure to put 3 in each one and try to make them all a little different. And then here we have all the other little findings that you'll need. And I'll go ahead and open this up so you can see it better. So we have here these little bezel cups we're going to create earrings with. And then here are your ear wires to finish your earrings. And then some jump rings and 2 clasps for your necklaces. And then a glue-on bail so that when we finish with the molds, you can glue your bail on there and finish your necklace. Now you'll have a choice of either the rectangle mold and the square bezel cup. These come as a set in one kit. Or the round mold and the round bezel cup. And when you get yours, you can just pop these off. I just left them on here so you could see what you'd be getting. They are, let's see, they're deep flex plastic molds, and I really do like these. I use these quite often with a lot of my projects. So that is what you will be getting from kit to kit, and let's get started on this. Now, a couple of things I want to mention that don't come with the kit so that you can be completely prepared. Oh, and I also provide a couple of extra measuring cups. I thought something was missing in sticks. Mainly because when you buy resin, sometimes the cups that come in resin kits can be really flimsy, or sometimes they don't come with the resin at all. So that way you're prepared with your measuring cups as well. So that being said, I do not include resin in this kit. The resin that I'm going to be using is the amazing Clear Cast Alumilite. This one is the Alumilite. I really like this resin. I get really nice consistent results with it. Of course, you don't have to buy, this is like 16 ounces each. You don't have to buy the great big containers. You can find smaller containers just to help you get started. But that way you can go to the store with a coupon and get your resin for less expensive than I can ship it to you for. So trying to be cost efficient for you guys there. And then a couple of other things. If you have a couple of pairs of needle nose pliers at home, just to use when finishing your necklaces with the jump rings and the clasps, just use 2 pair of needle nose pliers. I use these, and then I also use these, which are more jewelry specific. So if you have these, great. If not, don't rush out and buy them. If you've got a couple of these, that'll work just fine too. And that'll make sense when we get to that part. Just a pair of scissors to cut your papers with, and a super glue, some kind of super glue. I like the Loctite super glue. You can also use a jewelry glue. I just really like to use this one for all of my jewelry projects because it does work really, really well. And then I have a little nail file Isn't that fun? Girls just want to have fun. Just any kind of little emery board to finish up your pieces in case you need to finish your pieces. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So here I have a couple of things started in the molds already because I wanted to show you how to layer. So for just a second, we're going to jump way ahead. So with this one, I've actually already completed this piece. So when your finished piece is dry in your mold, you're just going to give it a little pressure in the center of the mold, and they pop right out. So you can see that, and we'll come back to finishing that in a little bit. But I wanted to use my mold here to show you how to get these cool layering effects and what we have going on here. So, and these are all with materials that come with your kit. So we're going to set this aside for a second, and let's get started in the mold first. So to create a layering effect like this, what you'll want to do is start with your first layer. Let me pour these out. So now you can see that I've put the first layer down, and then there's paper in the background, and then there's the gold flakes on the other part. Now with resin, when you're working with resin and trying to create layers like this, you'll see right here, I've already started here. So this is actually the front of your piece. This is going to be the front of your pendant. So you're working upside down. So I've started this one right here and just put a few beads in. And let me see if I can, I'm not sure how well it will read on the camera, but you can see I filled it just a little ways up, basically just to get those to stick down in there where I want them. And then I'm going to go back and fill in more resin in order to continue my layers. So let's just play with that for a second. So let's see. Put you there. Oh, my other little gear is stuck in the bag. And now when you're working with resin, I like these plastic molds. If you're purchasing items on your own after this, if you get addicted to this, which is easy to do, then you can choose from either plastic or silicone molds. They're both just fine. The plastic ones, one thing that you may notice is after you use them for a really long period of time, just from that popping out action of your pieces, it may start to crack just a little bit or scratch up. Usually, if it's really minor, just a coat of clear glaze on your pieces at the end will help cover that up. And then if you're using silicone molds, it's highly recommended to use a silicone spray, like a release spray, just to keep your silicone molds from being damaged, just to kind of make them last a little longer as well. So here I've just put those little pieces in there, and we're going to come back to the pouring in just a minute. But basically that's what you do with a mold. You're going to place your pieces in there where you want them, and then you're going to pour your resin. Now here's my first tip for creating your resin pieces. You want to have several pieces lined up and ready for your pouring before you mix your resin, because resin, once you mix it, it only lasts about it has about a 20-30 minute work time, depending on the temperature in your home, depending on the kind of resin you're using, and then it starts to get thick and it starts to set already. So that's something to keep in mind. So let's come over here and work with our bezels while that's waiting for us to mix resin. And now if you have little objects at home, you don't have to stick with just what's here in the kit. You can add other little objects too. Resin is a lot of fun that way. So I want to show you how I create these bales with the papers behind them. And I've got these two little earrings right here already finished so that I could show you how to finish your earrings. But you can see in here I've got the little paper in the background, and then I put the gears and then fill them with resin. So just want to share with you the easiest way that I have figured out how to measure to get the paper in the background of these. So let's see which one we'll use. And I want to use this for the back of that. So let's mix it up a little bit. How about we use this paper? So this pretty blue paper, and this is scrapbook paper, and you'll notice it's got a nice weight to it and it's easy to work with, but I'm just going to take my bezel right on the back and I'm just going to give the paper a little push into it. It doesn't have to be too harsh. Just give it a good little, just to get that little imprint on there. I'm trying to get that so you can see it really well. So that little imprint, and we have 2 of them. So I'm going to do one right next to it as well. So now you can see the 2 little imprints, and I'm just going to cut around those. Now these little bales are nice because they have kind of these little spikes on them that leave these little dots, and it almost makes it look perforated. So it's easy to just cut along. And if you can't get your circle super perfect, don't stress out about it, because clearly I can't cut a super perfect circle either. You want it to fit inside of your bezel right there. And even if there's maybe a little corner showing, a lot of times when you fill it with the resin, because the resin gives it that 3-dimensional look, it'll cover up some little teeny tiny imperfections like that. And, well, that circle came out much better. And just make sure it fits. Is that one a little? That's good. Okay, so now what I do, and this is where the glue comes in. So rather than just laying my papers in here and then putting the resin on top, I like to make sure that they're really secure. That way when the resin does get poured, it doesn't accidentally pull the papers up. That way I know everything stays. And plus as well, when I start adding my inclusions, I want to make sure that, that everything stays where I want it to. Now, if you're using this glue, I love this one simply because it's liquidy. It's almost like water when it comes out. You don't need much of it at all. And once it sticks and it's quick drying. But really just one tiny little drop of glue there. And then I'm going to put one of my papers on top, give it a nice little press, and we're good. Really doesn't take much at all. And that's that. So now we have a really pretty background for our earrings. So I'm going to put these little butterflies in here, if I can pick them up. There we go. And I'm just going to put them a little to the side. Just like that. Now, what I like to do when I add my inclusions in here, now you're not going to ever put glue into your mold, because if you try to put, like if you try to glue these pieces together, obviously the glue's going to get onto the mold. You're going to have kind of a mess. But when I'm doing this with the bezel cups, I add just a little tiny drop of this glue. This is why I like this glue so much. Just right on top of my butterfly. Let me lift this one up so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. Just somewhere along the butterfly. Oh, come on out. There it goes. And the glue will just spread out, and it's enough to keep that stuck on that paper and to keep it from moving when I go to pour my resin. Now, just a tip on this, you don't want to add a ton of glue, because first of all, it's not necessary. But second of all, if you add too much glue, or if you pour your resin while the glue is still wet, it creates kind of a chemical reaction, and you can actually get like some white bubbling that's not going to go away. So just a little bit goes a long way. So now we're going to set these aside as well. And let's see what we'll do with this fella here. How about, I'm going to use this paper, and the same thing with your larger bale, whether it's the round, well, let's do the square one since we did the round bezels. So you can use round, square, whatever shape your bezel comes in. If you buy some on your own, just kind of decide how you want your image to look. Put it a little down here, and again, just hold it in the back and just give it a good press. And these papers, the scrapbook papers, are wonderful because they are pretty sturdy, but they're not super thick. So there's no stress of cutting, you know, you don't have to hurt yourself trying to cut through them. Whoops. But there you can see the impression that's on there, and then I'm just going to cut that out. Just cut out that square. And I've also used other kinds of papers, so this is where resin is a lot of fun for me. I can really I love mixed media, and I'm a mixed media artist at heart, and so I think that's why I'm so drawn to the resin, because it's really just mixed media. It's just a lot of finding little materials that you want to play with, from dried flowers to papers to store-bought inclusions. You know, maybe you have something really special that's been given to you that's tiny that you want to commemorate into a resin charm or pendant to wear. So a lot of fun. Don't be scared to try. And you can see I feel I'm going to trim just a teeny tiny little bit away still, just to get it to fit comfortably in here. So if that happens, no worries. Sometimes that can happen, especially depending on how thick your frame is there. So just trim just slightly to get it to where you want it to be. Same thing here, little dot of glue, just right there in the center to hold it in place. And give it a good little press and tuck into the edges there. Okay. So now I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually just add a little bit of this glitter, this gold leaf glitter to this. And anytime you're working with glitter, it's going to get everywhere. But I want to show you a couple of techniques on how you can work with these gold flakes as well. So now right here, an option is I can leave it here and try to pour the resin over top of it. But you'll notice, and we'll play with that when we work on the other ones. Whoops. It's going to want to move around. So, you know, resin is very fluid, so it's going to want to move. So if you wanted to specifically get something around the corners, again, you can just drop a little glue, just a couple of drops, and it will run around those edges. And that's actually quite a bit. And I may even, and once you get it on there, you can add a little more. Make a great big mess on your table, because that's how we roll around here. And then wherever the glue is, those gold flakes are going to stick. So that looks pretty cool. Let me see if I can get a couple more on there. Yeah. And then you blow away the excess. Okay, and then we'll clean this up a little bit. And that's that. Same thing with your little beads. Now the beads, they're roly-poly, they slide around a bit. So let's see, we can just add a couple of them down here. I like the clear beads, they add pretty glimmery accents too. We'll put a couple of the white ones in there. I feel like they're like white pearl style things. They're just very classic. And just don't feel like you have to do things exactly as I'm doing them. Obviously, you're going to do whatever speaks to you. And then here again, let me see if I can lift it up so the camera sees it better. I'm just going to, right in the center of those beads, just let that glue drop down. And I don't know how much you can see it, but it really does just flow right around all of, whoops, right around all of those. Yeah, don't get your glue too close because it'll pick them up. I meant to demonstrate that. Okay, so we'll just leave this aside for now too, and of course you can add other things in there, but I want to move along to show you guys the rest of what I want to share with you. So now, once you have your items completed, once you have everything set up the way you want to, and of course you can fill these in as well, use them as earrings, use them for little small pendants, however you want to, you're going to mix your resin. So once you have your pieces together. So you'll see on the measuring cups we have milliliters, and so some of them have, I actually found one yesterday that had teaspoons, which was funny because it reminded me of like the children's medicine cups. I like the millimeters. You can also get them in ounces. Millimeters tend to be pretty exact, so that's one reason I enjoy that. Now, for no more than we have here, I think I'm just going to mix, well, we'll go ahead and mix a good bit. I'll find something to do with it just so you guys can really see the mixing. I like to take a black Sharpie and mark my cups sometimes because, you know, they're on here clear, the markings, and so sometimes that can be hard to see. Now, when you mix your resin, you want to make sure you're following the manufacturer's instructions. Now, for the amazing clear cast that I'm using, the Alumilite resin, it's a 2-part epoxy, which is what you're going to be purchasing for yourself. You want to use a 2-part epoxy. And for this particular one, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So that means 1 part resin, 1 part hardener. And so I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. So make sure whatever resin you're using that you know the ratio that you need to mix it with. And it's really important to make sure you get your ratios right, because if you don't, what can happen is either you can end up with pieces that, more than likely what will happen is you'll end up with pieces that just don't quite set right. They don't quite harden the way that they should, cure the way that they should, and they'll end up feeling just kind of tacky, kind of sticky, and they'll never quite get that nice smooth glass-like finish that you're looking for. Let that settle and see where we're at. Yep, looks good. So that was the part A, and then we're going to add our part B. Okay. Now, when you mix your resin, you really want to take your time to avoid air bubbles. Now, you're going to have a few, and there are ways that you can deal with that, but prevention is the best medicine, in my opinion, when it comes to this. So you really just want to take your time and mix it as slowly as possible. And it takes about a minute most of the time for most resins to mix. Let me see if I can show you. You're getting that kind of swirly, looks kind of like white swirls. You want to make sure all of that is mixed properly, thoroughly mixed, so you no longer have any streaking, any swirliness in your resin. You want it to be one nice, consistent texture. Sorry, I just kind of meditated into the mixing and spaced out a little bit. So you don't want to stir it like you're whisking eggs or cake batter. Okay, you want to really, it's kind of more of folding it in there, because the more bubbles you can avoid creating, the better. This is actually the resin pouring part of this can be very relaxing, I think. I think it can be a nice calming activity for our stressful, busy lives that we have. And of course, the more resin that you have, so if you pour, if you have a larger cup of this and you're pouring double this amount, it's going to take a little longer even to get it mixed thoroughly. So you want to take about a minute to mix your resin. And then kind of let it sit for just a second to let the air bubbles pop up. You can let it sit for a few minutes if you have a ton of air bubbles. So if you see the larger bubbles, you can push them to the side. If you let it sit for about a minute, 2 to 3 minutes, it will help also to push some of the air bubbles out as well. There's just a little tip. So while I'm letting my resin sit over here for a moment or two, there we go. I want to show you how I got the paper measured for this guy. So same kind of thing, same general concept. Let me find the paper that I wanted to use. So I already poured this, like I said, and it's already set and hardened. So I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to decide what I want. I had an idea yesterday. Let's see. I think right about there. So then what I'm going to do to measure this to make it as stress-free as possible. You're not going to get the same, let's see, indentation as crisp as you would with these because they're metal. So working with the plastic, you can get kind of a good idea. But you can also take a pencil just real lightly and kind of keep the pencil on its side and feel where those edges are. And if you keep it kind of on the side, it gives you a little more control than trying to hold it up and down because the edges are beveled, so it'll roll away from you. So just kind of right there. That one I can even see it a little bit. And then I have my general shape, and I'm going to cut that out as well. Now when you're cutting papers for the molds, a tip that I have for you there, if you're using this as a background and you really want to fill it in quite a bit, you can play around with that. You can let it float kind of on the top. If you want to cover the background with something the way that I did with this one with the gold, you want the paper to be a little lower down. Let's see. But you want to have at least a little bit of space around your paper, just to allow some resin to float once you have your paper in there. You want the resin to be able to get around there just a little bit. Trying to cut a straight line and talking at the same time clearly does not work for me. But you want to give the resin a little bit of space to be able to work around the inside edges, just to try to avoid air bubbles as much as possible. So let's see. That one is being very sneaky with me. Oh, I think I'm going to cut part of this part off. There we go. Cool. So you can see there's just a little bit of space. It's not in there so tightly that I couldn't pull it out. And yeah, I want it in there that way. So now, if you're using paper in your mold like this, what you'll want to do is, I already have this right here, but I'm going to still add just a little bit of resin on top first. Just give it a nice little coat. And if you use your stick, especially if you're first starting out, it's going to give you a lot more control than if you just try to pour it. So give yourself a chance to get the hang of this before you get too wild with it. And then get as wild as you want. So what I'm going to do with the paper, and I found this to be the easiest way to avoid getting air trapped underneath the paper, I'm actually just going to take this and dump it in there. Dunk it, maybe not dump it. Dunk it in the resin. I didn't get any on that side. And really try to coat it. You might need to get a little messy, so having a towel or paper towels on hand is always a good idea. And you don't want all the resin to drip off of it. But then I'm going to just lay it on top. Just really gently lay it on top. Really gently scoot it to where I want it. And let that sit for just a moment to let the resin sink through. And then this is why I wanted to keep a little bit of space in between. So now I'm going to go back on my edges here and make sure it's filled. And then I'm going to very carefully make sure. Yep. So, and that prevents air bubbles from getting in there. I can't flip it upside down or everything will fall out, but you can carefully lift your mold up if you want to take a look at it. And now I'm just going to leave this one alone and let it set and cure. So your resin is going to take anywhere from 24 to 48 hours to cure, again, depending on the brand that you're using. So just consider that. So now with this, what I wanted to show you with this, how we get the layering and how this whole process came about, I'm going to put just enough resin underneath these to get them to stick. And sometimes with these pieces that are a little larger, I'm going to flip that one simply because it's coated in resin on the other side to help prevent an air bubble from getting underneath there. But really slowly, and work around the edges of your inclusions. So if you start using larger inclusions, let's see, let's put a bead in here just to demonstrate. So even if you have a bead in here, working around the edges of your inclusion and kind of swirling it around is going to give it a chance for the resin to sink underneath those pieces and those items. Just pouring it on top, especially like I said with the larger gear, flat pieces, if it's going to be flat against the bottom of your cup, can tend to trap air. So that's really all I'm going to do here. Maybe just a little bit more because those are pretty centered. So now I'm going to let that cure. So you can see I've put just enough in there, and the reason for that is even if you only wanted those pieces in there and nothing else for another layer, you want to do this step by step because those pieces are going to maybe float around in your resin. They're either going to move around and kind of float and wiggle because they're going to be moving in the resin, or they might actually float up, and then the design that you're going for is going to be kind of messed up. So now I'm going to fill in my bezels. And now with these are very small, so you want to take your time and just do a drop or so. If you have some wax paper, it's a good idea to use a little bit of wax paper, especially when you're beginning at this, or if you're me and you tend to just zone out and drift. And you can move it around just a little bit, but just make sure you don't add more resin to it when you're moving it around just a little. But you can see how the resin moves through there, and it will get in all those little nooks and crannies. And that is it on that. And we'll just let those sit. I'm going to scooch them over here. And you can actually, super carefully, if you wanted to let them cure on a tray, probably if you had a larger tray, it would be better. But if you don't have wax paper handy, you could carefully move them over to your resin mold because you don't have to worry about it getting stuck. If you accidentally pour your resin on a table and or if you're pouring your resin on a table like with the bezels and the resin flows over and it cures that way, it's just going to be there for life. I've learned that the hard way. Now, one thing you'll notice with these, because they have the bales on the back, they kind of sit at an angle. So they're going to sit at kind of a tilt. So one way that you can avoid that is to just take a piece of paper or a little piece of cardboard. Actually, once you pull those off of your molds, you can use that too. My little list that I have here. And you can actually just place those on top just to the point where it looks like it's a little more level. Maybe just a little bit more. So that'll make it a little more level. And you just kind of play around with it. And of course right now, since the camera's rolling, that is not going to cooperate with me. There we go. And then same thing, you're just going to carefully pour around the edges and drizzle it in there. Now, one thing I love about this resin is that it really doesn't bubble up much and it sets really clear. But again, there are a lot of good resins out there, so whatever you can find that you are drawn to, that is available to you at your local craft store or online at Amazon. And you just fill those edges in. And you see I still have quite a bit more resin, so I'll end up pouring that into something when we're done with the video. So that's just something to think about, is making sure you plan your pieces first. So now I'm going to set these aside and show you how to finish some of your pieces, because if you're really new to jewelry making, you're going to need to know how to get all your pieces together. So that's why I already have a few pieces cured. So now when you pop your piece out of your mold, you may have a few little edges that are popping out here. And with these, not so much with the round ones, but if you have a little bit that's over, this is a soft resin. Epoxy resin stays kind of soft, so you can actually just trim with a pair of sharp scissors some of those rough edges away to make sure your shape is nice and clean. And then just take the soft side of an emery board and just really lightly smooth it out if you have any bumpy edges on there, just to smooth it out a little bit. Now, to make this into a necklace, you're going to want to attach your bail. So to do that, again with the super glue, easy peasy lemon squeezy, decide which side is up, which side you want up. Put just a little drop of glue. A little dab will do you. And then put your bail. It's hard to see with all that glitter. And just give it a good little press. Just be careful that the glue isn't running over the edges, because you might lose a fingerprint. And that's really it. And that's another reason I love this glue. Like I said, once it's on there, it's set. So now I'm going to take my chain, and if you're using your bail, all you want to do is just run your chain through your bail, obviously, just like we're going to do on the smaller one. So I'm going to run my chain through the bail, and we're going to finish the ends. So now we're going to use two of our jump rings, these little guys right here. If you're brand new to this, these are called jump rings, and I like to laugh and say they're called jump rings because they tend to jump out of my hands when I'm trying to work with them. And then we have our clasp and just a larger jump ring as a closure. So I put in a few extra jump rings in case they do try to jump away from you. Now what you'll notice on your jump rings is that you have this little opening right here. And so you'll take your jewelry pliers or your 2 pairs of needle nose pliers, and you'll simply open it up just a little bit, and you'll slide it through the last loop on your chain. Oh. Let's try this side. That one has a little nip on it. Okay, there we go, just like that. And then you're going to take your clasp and you're going to slide it right through there and close your jump ring. Just like that. This one has a little bit of chain stuck in there from where it was cut. So that's why I was struggling with that a little. There we go. So then we're going to take our other jump ring and the same thing. Just open it up real slightly. You don't have to open it way, way up because then you might lose your shape on it. So real gently, just enough to get it through that loop and through your chain on the other side. And then close it up. Just like that. Make sure that they're touching. And then you have your finished necklace. Now if you want to, you can also add a clear glaze. That's totally optional. It does add a nice shine to the resin pieces, and I like to do that totally up to you. Now, the nice thing about these is they're super simple. You just open them up. These are kidney wires. And this is going to be the front. So you're going to take your earring. Oh, I did it backwards. You're going to take your earring upside down and slide it over the front. And you have your finished earring. So there you go. Super cool. And then you can create your own set however you want it. And you can know that no one's going to have one exactly the same way, which is a lot of fun, or you can use these to create gift sets. So there's that, you guys. If you have any questions about the process of any of this, please let me know in the comments, and I will also put the Etsy information in the comment or in the description box, and I will try to get it linked as well. Still learning some of the technical things, but I hope that you enjoy that, and I hope you guys buy some of these kits and share with me what you create. I love to see what people create. I've been teaching some classes, and it's been so much fun, and that was actually another inspiration for me to do this video, because I know sometimes people want to do the classes, but they're out of town or they're at work or whatever. So this gives people basically an overview of some of what I do at the classes that I teach as well. So thanks you guys for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for lots of tutorials and other fun things. So see you soon and have a great day.